Okay, so as we look at this iceberg, let's look at some of the dimensions of culture here. Values. Those are those deep-seated, foundational principles that we live by. And I'm sure if we asked you to identify 3 or 4 values that you live by, we would probably have 100 different answers. Because each person has their own unique values. And we need to learn to respect those as their expression of what is important for them. And very closely connected with values are the beliefs, what you hold as truth. And again, there's great differences there. We look at the world today in the Middle East, and we say, how? What kind of beliefs are there? How could they live that way? Because it's just so different than what we hold as beliefs. How would they be willing to sacrifice themselves, their life, as well as so many other lives? So, values and beliefs. And then perceptions. Now this is sometimes can be get us into trouble. Because I see something happening and I perceive it in a certain way. For example, I might see 2 men out there speaking very loudly and waving their arms. From my culture, the Irish background, I'm afraid of a fight breaking out. Because where I grew up, that often happened, particularly if they had a little bit too much to drink. And sometimes that happens with the Irish. But, so my perception is how I see it. Somebody else's perception, say an Italian, well, how might they perceive it? Anybody Italian here? Okay, good. How would you see that?
I could see that as rather normal.
Yes. Speak out.
I could see that as very normal.
Yes. We talk with our hands. We
Yes.
do have a loud voice when we get excited.
It helps. It helps to make ourselves understood.
Yes. So do you see the differences there? And both of us are correct in our perception. Our perception. Okay, very closely connected to the perception then are the assumptions. So I assume there's going to be a fight. And I don't like physical fighting. I'm afraid of it. What do you assume? It's normal.
I would assume that they're passionate about something.
Yes. Okay. Very good. They're speaking with conviction. They've got something to say to each other. So assumptions. Perceptions, assumptions. Then comes attitudes, how I feel about it. I'm fearful. That's my feeling. Hers, they're passionate. It's good. It's good to be that way. See how different we are? And what happens is, as we said before, this is unconscious. You are not aware of it until it is brought to your attention. I remember in Puerto Rico when I was teaching American history, and I had to use a book that was written and printed in Spain. That's the way I felt. Yes. It was difficult for me. So then we come to the American Revolution, and I said, listen, I can handle this without that book. So I'm teaching, going on, and after the class, 3 boys, this was 10th grade, 3 boys came up and said to me, "Sister, you're very prejudiced, aren't you?" Prejudiced? I was never accused of that. But my feelings as realizing that my grandparents had to leave their country because of the famine in Ireland. And the British could have done something. They didn't have to take all the potatoes. I mean, I had done some study on it. Okay, it came out so unconsciously that to this day, I still remember that clearly. And I know deep down I have some strong feelings there. But I never thought they would come out so obviously to a group of students. So do you see how unconscious it is? Culture. Unconscious. So we can make some terrible mistakes unaware of it. Unaware of it. And if they had not told me, I would still be going on, not even aware that I have that's obvious to others. And I mean, it made me really stop and think. Where was I coming from? What was that history? And that's part of culture. Okay. So, values, beliefs, perceptions, assumptions, attitudes. And then there are those norms, those unspoken norms. That's what norms are. They're not written down any place. You know, you move into a new neighborhood, or you maybe go to a new parish. You don't know what the norms are. You don't get a little booklet saying this is what's important for us. Okay, religious life, entering religious life, the same thing. We have so many unwritten norms. And you don't know it's a norm, a rule, until you have what?
Broken it.
Broken it. Misbehaved. All kinds of things can be called. They can say to you. So those norms can get you into serious trouble sometimes. Another incident was when I was in Adjuntas, which is a very small village, way up in the mountains. And I was the principal of this grade in high school, and I was anxious to get to know the students. And so at Saturday night Mass, I did not know this, but it was a custom. The church is built on the plaza. And so it was the custom that after Mass, the high school girls, particularly the juniors and seniors, would get together and just kind of walk around the plaza. I thought that was very innocent. So here I get, and I'm walking with them. Uh-oh. If you walk this direction around the plaza, you are telling the people, particularly the young men and the boys, that you are available for an evening of activity. Pretty soon, a dear grandmother comes up and kind of pulls me aside and says, "Catalina, come and sit with me." And I said, "Well, I want to walk with the girls." "No, no, come and sit." And I was still resisting it. So finally she says right out, I was pretty dense. She says, "That is not appropriate for a nun to walk around the plaza that way." Unspoken norm. Very important norm. And thank God she did it. God knows where I would have ended up if I was that innocent. So those norms are so essential in culture. And again, we don't even think of them as different until we move into a situation where it's not practiced. I'm sure, is there any married couples here to each other? No, okay. I'm sure that when a couple marry, they just think it's going to be oh so wonderful.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, what's happening? The two cultures are coming together, and they thought they talked about everything at the pre-Cana conferences. They knew each other so well. The two cultures are coming together. Even the simple thing of when do you put up the Christmas tree? That's very culturally based, according to your family. Or even if you have a Christmas tree. A simple thing like that. So they have to kind of begin to establish their own family culture. And it's based on those norms. Now, with all of that, values, beliefs, perceptions, assumptions, attitudes, norms, we then begin to create our identity. Who we are. Who do we belong to? What do we belong to? You belong to a family, and then you moved from the family to the community. And sometimes there might have been some difficulties in the culture settings, the cultural expectations. So that identity is so, so important. And that's what the Vietnamese young children were trying to create, an identity that would be appropriate in the United States. They did not want the identity that was appropriate in Vietnam. And the grandparents were what? Trying to maintain that identity.